Very sad that those people lost their money. When you go to FTX, you're talking about the crypto native traders who are watching this market every single day, who are passionate about it, many of whom were hedge funds and institutions that viewed it as a trusted custodian, had all their money there. Well, those people have now lost their money and they are no longer long crypto, right? And so when you talk about trading, which you brought up, we talk about trading, for me, the path of max pain for the crypto enthusiast is if price goes up.
Bitcoin prices are going back to normal finally. But is this the norm or just a brief reflection of the famous saying, after the storm comes the calm? What if another crypto exchange implodes? To answer that question, in today's video, we will have Scott Melker, a crypto trader and investor known as the Wolf of All Streets, owner of the YouTube channel with the same name, step in and give his thoughts about current prices and the future of Bitcoin. First, what are his predictions for 2023?
But I do think that we will see a pretty continued bottoming process. People always look for this big event to be the bottom of any market, this capitulation, but more often than not, you actually sort of see things range and accumulation, and then prices slowly grind up, actually causing more pain for the people who failed to gain exposure when it was at the bottom. I would anticipate that we see kind of more sideways chop as we see the macro really give us some clarity. I don't expect that Bitcoin is going to skyrocket while the Fed continues to maintain their hawkish tone, and we don't know what's happening with other markets. So I think that that's pretty much my prediction for all markets this year, is that we don't get a raging bull market, at least not at the beginning, but that does eventually happen, whether that be towards the end of the year or coming into election year in 2024 when things tend to turn around.
Also, have you heard about what's happening with Genesis and DGC? Can this be the next big scandal to hit the crypto markets? According to some crypto experts, if another exchange or big company in the industry collapse, that could be the end for Bitcoin. Every time an event like this happened in the past, like Terra Luna or Celsius or even FTX, Bitcoin still survived and the network growth kept increasing. So what's Scott's opinion on this? Can an event like this wipe out crypto?
I don't know that another exchange is about to collapse. I believe, obviously, that Genesis is insolvent, but that's been largely priced in, and we can dive into DCG later. Obviously, there's been conjecture about Binance, but that's largely due to lack of transparency versus any actual evidence that there's a problem there. We do know that they have quite a bit of crypto on their balance sheet, but I want to address the notion and the sentiment of what you said, right? People would have said the same thing about FTX in September and October, and they did. After we saw Celsius, Voyager, BlockFi, Three Arrows Capital, Luna, all collapse, people said, if we get one more big one, it's over. And there was nothing bigger than FTX, certainly as far as Sam Bankman-Fried being the representative of the industry on Capitol Hill and being sort of the guy that people look to as the angel of this industry. And what happened? Price of Bitcoin broke down and is now trading higher than it was before the FTX debacle only 2 months later. And people would have told you that FTX was the end of crypto. Mt. Gox was a huge event in 2014. It was basically the only Bitcoin exchange on the planet. It ended up insolvent. People are still creditors, and the asset class came back and continued to rise. So I think it's extremely hyperbolic to say that it would be over. In fact, when people start telling me that an asset, regardless of what it is going to zero and start giving me irrational reasons, that usually means that it's a time to buy. Listen, it would be catastrophic in the short term if something like Binance did fail. I don't see that happening, but if it did, but the market would absorb it and rebound as it always has in the past. I don't think it would be more catastrophic than FTX. I think that in my mind, FTX was the worst possible scenario. Not only because it was the second or third largest exchange, and the amount of assets and the amount of creditors that there were, but because FTX, as I said, Sam Bankman-Fried was viewed as the godsend for the crypto industry, who was going to push through sensible regulation, who was meeting with the SEC, giving donations to politicians, who was basically pushing. And he was the last person that the crypto industry could afford to see go down as a fraud. And he is just that. It's a fraud. This has nothing to do with Bitcoin. SBF is criminal, right? And that was widespread fraud. More importantly, though, with FTX, if you think about it, we had these Celsius and Voyager collapses and these crypto banks, as people like to call them, your average retail investor who was not really crypto native probably had some of their savings on there because they were looking to earn some yield. Very sad that those people lost their money. When you go to FTX, you're talking about the crypto native traders who are watching this market every single day, who are passionate about it, many of whom were hedge funds and institutions that viewed it as a trusted custodian, had all their money there. Well, those people have now lost their money and they are no longer long crypto, right? And so when you talk about trading, which you brought up, we talk about trading, for me, the path of max pain for the crypto enthusiast is if price goes up. Your money is gone, you're in chapter 11, you thought that you were long crypto. What happens if you finally get a settlement of 50 cents on the dollar and Bitcoin's trading at $45,000 rather than the 17 that you were credited for when you lost it? Mm-hmm. So to me, FTX is the biggest deal possible because of the people and the community that lost their money on there. DCG would have institutional effects, but your average trader is not going to be shaken by a DCG failure. They're just going to look to buy the dip as they generally do. It would be disingenuous to say that there's no chance that a bigger shoe could drop. I'm just saying I'm not seeing evidence of that right now, and people are already extremely weary of DCG. FTX caught everyone by surprise. Listen, there was that 2-week lead up after the CoinDesk article that kind of pointed out that FTT was the bulk of Alameda's balance sheet, and that it was seemingly an open door between the two. But I mean, for now, I think that people are very hesitant to put much faith in DCG, so that should be pressed in.
He even adds this up.
Of course, now that we've seen these centralized platforms failing, including FTX, there's been a real movement back to the initial and original ethos of Bitcoin, which is not your keys, not your coins. Self-custody has been a massive movement over the past few months. Ledger in March is dropping their new wallet that's designed by the same person who designed the iPod, right? It's really slick and is going to make the UX and the UI much more comfortable for your average mainstream person. So I think that, yes, this is a push back towards the original ethos of decentralization and being your own bank. And that could be the silver lining of everything that is happening here.
And to close in, Scott also goes through the question, what about crypto manipulation? Is it happening right now?
I mean, moving the price of an asset is part of a free market, not a manipulated market, right? Just because someone has more money than you and can sell more aggressively or buy more aggressively does not mean it's manipulated. That's the trademark of a free market. And every single person who's a part of that free market has the opportunity to take the same trade as that whale who's pushing price in one or the other direction. That's up to you. I would argue that a manipulated market is bonds, stocks, where the Fed steps in and offers a backstop and buys every bond when there's no buyer of last resort, invests in treasuries. That's a manipulated market, right? Yeah. A free market comes with a lot of risk because there is no regulation and price can go up or down in massive swings because of a large entity. But I would argue that that's a good thing. I wouldn't even need to push back, to be quite honest. Listen, you can look at Bitcoin. China went offline, right? Completely in the summer, I believe 2021, in May, we saw this massive sort of collapse, but the Bitcoin network lost 50% of its hash rate. Nobody stepped in to backstop it. Nobody stepped in to fix it. Price went down. The network recovered, remained secure, and hash rate rose once again, and so did price. And that's the trademark of a free market. It didn't require anyone to manipulate it and step in and fix it. We do have the option now to opt out with Bitcoin or gold or whatever your asset of choice is that is a little bit less manipulated or controlled by the government. I mean, you talk about wanting to separate money from state. Yeah, we should, because the Fed has a precisely 0% hit rate at being accurate on what's coming with inflation. They overshoot in both directions. They're never right. Their dot plots are completely absurd. And that's who's supposed to be setting monetary and financial policy. The reason that these assets exist, in my mind, is not because they're going to become the global standard. There are people who think that, or replace money. It's because you can opt out of that system that you know is going to be persistent, that's going to perpetuate, and that's always going to be dishonest and not in your favor, right? And so listen, if we end up in a world, in my opinion, where government and money are separated, that effectively means that we see the dollar collapse, right? Because it's no longer the global reserve currency. In my opinion, the dollar would be the last to collapse of all currencies. And now we're living in a dystopian Mad Max future. And we're excited that we have our Bitcoin and gold when we're going down to Gas Town with our army of servants. No, I don't think that that can happen. We can't get there in a peaceful manner. Governments are always going to control monetary policy. We just need to find ways to take care of ourselves.
What can we expect in the future if crypto thrives? Will the fiat currency still be used, or can crypto replace it entirely as a better, safer, and more reliable form of money?
That is an accurate description of Gresham's law, that bad money drives out the good. But the reason is because people hoard the good money.
Yeah.
Right? It's taken out of circulation and becomes a store of value and becomes something that they hoard and use. I mean, people could argue that that's the same thing that's happened with gold, right? Or that gold demonetized silver.
Right.
Choose your narrative for it. There's a lot of examples of this, but it's very clear that fiat is the bad money. I mean, we all know that it's backed by unicorn dust, or I guess a military and trust in a government. And Bitcoin is backed by math, and gold is a hard asset that's, has a limited supply. So they're driven out of, when you say that the bad drives out the good, you're talking about driving it out of circulation, not out of existence, right?
Yes.
So I still think that those assets become a store of value. And I am at the point now where I don't believe that people will want to aggressively transact in Bitcoin or gold in the future. It's becoming a store of value. It's becoming a digital gold, and people are going to want to hold it for its value. In fact, crypto has its own version of the bad money, which are stable coins. Dollar is the global reserve currency. Your average person literally cannot access dollars, right? You just can't get your hands on them. You go to the black market, you overpay by 10 times if there's a hyperinflationary environment. Well, now anybody with a phone and a crypto wallet has open access to dollars. So crypto is actually solved for both the bad money and the good in this case. We have the good money, which people will continue to hoard and use as a store of value. And we have open access to the bad money for people who need it, and that is in the form of stablecoins.
Did you enjoy this interview? Want to see more daily crypto curated content from the best experts in the world? Let us know in the comments below, and please leave a like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. See you tomorrow.